My name is Jason Medlock, and you're watching Expansion of Consciousness, where we explore the powers of the subconscious mind, learn to reprogram the mind for success using quantum hypnosis, teaching mental strategies for athletes, coaches, and business professionals that produce peak performance. Also using meditation and mindfulness to build more focus. Let's get to it right now.
I want to welcome you to the Transform Your Mindset Bootcamp with the fascination with the human mind. The fascination with consciousness is what drives you.
You cannot miss the fact that mental training techniques roll right in the dynamic of the actual training process. Wow. Welcome to the mental game plan. I'm sorry. We have two podcasts working, but welcome to the mental game plan. I'm your host, Jason Medlock. And when we started this entire platform, we moved from spirituality and all the wonderful things that hypnosis and all the different coaching techniques that were out there, what they can do to the human mind, reprogramming the human mind using self-hypnosis, using meditation to balance your everyday life for more focus, for more concentration. And now we work in the space of helping the everyday business professional, helping the athlete, and helping the regular person understand how to control the mind in stressful situations, how to reprogram the mind to react, perform at your job, and to perform in situations that may be a little tough for you. Well, today I'm excited to have Dr. Eddie on with us. Dr. Eddie is a professional speaker, clinical and sports psychologist who specializes in helping individuals remove barriers to reach their peak performance. With his expertise, he has worked with youth, high school, and collegiate, national and international junior Olympic professionals, athletes and coaches, performers, and musicians. Dr. Eddie is a fellow certified mental performance consultant through the Association of Applied Sports Psychology and United States Sports Olympic Committee, Sports Psychology Registry member. I want to also note that Dr. Eddie has worked with hundreds of athletes and professionals throughout his career. He's a sought-after expert by the media and has appeared on Fox News, Sirius XM, Doctor Radio, and has been quoted in several publications such as ESPN.com, NBA.com, the Los Angeles Times, Runner's World, New York Mag, and CNN. The author and the host of Psychology and Performance: How to Be Your Best in Your Life by the Great Courses. Dr. Eddie is quoted in the New York Times as being the Netflix of learning that recruits the world's greatest professors and are truly special. With over 350 speaking engagements and media appearances worldwide, Dr. Eddie delivers a powerful and entertaining message to his audience. Without any further ado, we're going to go ahead and bring in Dr. Eddie. Hi, Dr. Eddie. How you doing today?
I am great. So excited to be here and share some wisdom with your audience about getting better. Looking forward to this. Thank you.
Awesome. And I was doing a lot of research on you and your website, and such a fabulous career. This journey into sports psychology that you've undertaken is absolutely awesome. And I'm just wondering, could you share with us what drew you into the field of sports psychology, especially considering your challenges as a high school athlete yourself?
Sure. Yeah, that's really where it started. So I always knew I wanted to be a psychologist, kind of a nerd, like young, reading Freud's analysis of dreams for fun. So I was always kind of called to do that. But as you know, like psychology typically gets this rap for like just pathology. And that's fine. And we need that. And that's going to be helpful. But as a runner, In high school, I was like the best of the worst of the best, very, very average, but a tremendous work ethic. And my identity was really wrapped up in being an athlete, which is kind of ridiculous because, again, I wasn't really that good. But that being said, I was a half miler and I wanted to break 210 my senior year, but I kept coming across in 211, 211, 211.
Right.
And I would come across the finish line, not tired, and then go off to the sideline under the bleachers and throw up as if I was exhausted. And what I didn't figure out until I went to graduate school, but one of the things that intrigued me earlier on was like, well, what's going on here? And I realized that as I was crossing the finish line, I was mad and upset that, oh, if I just run faster, I could have beat my time. I just did this again. I'll get it the next time. And what it was my unconscious mind protecting me from failure. Because somewhere in my head, I felt like if I gave it my all and I still failed, something terrible was going to happen. So my mind sabotaged my performance and wouldn't let me push 100%. So I kept hitting 211 despite I was doing that for over a year. And what I wish I had known and realized at the time was my girlfriend still loved me when I was running 211. My parents still supported me. My teammates were encouraging. Like, I was failing. That's the crazy thing. I was failing because 211 is 211. But I didn't feel like I was. It was this, again, unconscious weird thing because I was like, well, there was hope that was kept alive. Anyway, good news. I ran a 209 in my last race. I'm not going to say that the coach is a little bit fast with his finger. Who knows? But I'm going to say objectively on file, I broke my, but could I have done 205? Could I have run a 159? Based on my training, I think it suggests that my physical training, I really might have been able to get much closer to that goal. So I go off to college, major in psychology, don't know really what I want to do. Last class I take in college is sports psychology. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is a thing. Like I could have used this the last 8 years. There's something that you can do to interact with your thoughts and feelings differently so that you can actually perform your best, that there's this psychology of excellence, not just of pathology. So I went to graduate school and I specialized. I stayed becoming a clinical psychologist, but I specialized in what athletes suffer from the most: performance anxiety, injury, rehabilitation. Those are my big specialties. And I could keep going, but that's the brief, long story.
And it's fascinating that you were able to overcome that in some ways. And all athletes have to overcome something and try to figure out how they're going to be better and what it takes to get to that next level. And I think a lot of them don't really realize that they're exercising the subconscious mind, the unconscious mind, so to speak, and that they are actually willing themselves, with extreme focus, in the theta brainwave state to become better. And as I think about the psychological barriers of performance, and it has a lot to do with the identity and the way you see yourself. In your career, you've discussed the psychological barriers that athletes face, and particularly the intertwining of the identity and their performance. I guess my question would be, how do you help athletes navigate the complex relationship to enhance their performance?
Yeah, great. Really wonderful point. And to clarify, I was frustrated and became a sports psychologist because I didn't break through it in high school. Like the 209, I don't count as really meeting the goal, knowing I could have done that my junior year probably. And it's only through the training, which I know you like to emphasize, like this isn't just something that you have or don't have. What's wonderful about this that we didn't realize 20, 30 years ago is to the degree that we do today, is that our mental skills, our emotional skills, there's a science that can lead us through it, and there's a way to train it. So to your point, one of the big things is your identity. You saw in my story that part of the problem was that I was over-identified as my athletic performance being my worth. I grew up very achievement oriented. A lot of my perfectionists out there, I know I'm going to be speaking to you. We earn our worth and I have to keep doing it. And I want to save all of those who are maybe younger out there from a midlife crisis like I had, because that ended up being an exhausting treadmill. Because again, listeners, you ever accomplish something and it feels good for like 5 minutes and then you got to do it again? Like even in high school, I saw this. I remember I did beat, I think it was my junior year. I did hit my PR. And my butt was still burning with the lactic acid, and I'm rocking back and forth on the track. And my coach comes up and tells me, congratulations, shakes my hand, tells me I ran my PR. And I was like, cool. And then I thought, and I'm going to beat it by 1 second next week. And I was like there, like with the pain in my butt, still fire. And I was like, Eddie, there's something wrong with you. Like, you need to enjoy this. And then I laughed and I let it go and I went right back to it. But it plagued me, as it does many of you out there.
Hmm.
The idea that no matter how much we accomplish, it's never enough, because that's not how it is. And if our identity is based in our achievement and our win-loss record and our body shape and our how much money we make, you can feel good a little bit at a time, but it's a treadmill. And you will get exhausted and you will find out at the end that that's not it. That's not enough. So for me personally, I heard you mention spirituality in your intro. For me, where it really turned around was realizing that God was at the center of my life, not these achievements. And through that Christianity and accepting Jesus, a lot of that had changed for me. And that's where a lot of the pressure had changed. Now, keep in mind, I can still be excellent, but now it's without the weight of having to earn my worth, because that's where a lot of my barriers were. I couldn't run 210 because I couldn't risk the failure, because I didn't know who I would be if I did. And that barrier gets removed when I realize that track is just something that I do. It's not who I am.
Dr. Eddie, people have these mental blockages, and we were speaking about the self-identity crisis, but mental blockages are also found even with the average business person. You're a sports psychologist, but I know you work with all kind of people. And if we can't get the athlete to self-identify, to understand where the problems are, it's just hard for us to help anyone, especially an athlete who is, focused and training at the highest level. And you mentioned hitting a mental block your senior year in high school. I was reading, and based on your personal experience and your professional expertise, can you tell us what strategies you would recommend for any athlete facing similar mental roadblocks?
Yes, absolutely. And so athletes and non-athletes alike, get your pen and paper out now, because we're going to have to drop some knowledge that is going to make a difference. And I promise you this, because I would say that over my 30 years of experience now, the number one thing that I see is some level of anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
But just like you had said it, we always talk about it as if it's a problem. And I realize that it is. Anxiety was my problem. It interferes. I'm not denying that. And certainly I'm saying if you have a panic disorder, obsessive compulsive disorder, something like that, it's going to take a little bit more work than I'm about to say here. But the vast majority of athletes that come to me with perfectionism, we can't, stay focused. They're choking under pressure. They can't sleep the night before because they don't want to let down their teammates, the what if thinking, the overthinking. If any of this sounds familiar, I'm saying you're in exactly the place that you need to be. Am I really supposed to tell you that you're going into a competition where somebody's trying to kick your butt? If you make a mistake, your team's is going to be upset and let down. Your coaches are going to be angry. Your parents are likely to be disappointed, at least for you, if not at you. You put in tons of time and energy, and so you're going to be really hurt by this mistake. Am I supposed to tell you that everything's okay and just be positive? Am I supposed to tell you what if I'm working in a tournament and I'm talking to 12 teams in this tournament? Am I supposed to really go up on stage and preach and say everybody's got to really believe that they could win? Because I'm telling you, at the end of the tournament, 11 of those teams are going to think I suck because I would have been wrong and it didn't work. Whereas only one team is like, wow, that works. We won. So what I want to get across to everybody here is the acceptance of the anxiety is a very natural, normal human state. And I don't say that to just be like, so don't worry about it and move on and then do this instead. I want you to actually pause, because that's what we don't do. Slow down and say, I have every right to be anxious right now. I should be worried about my future, whether I'm going to get the scholarship, what's going to happen. Create some space for this discomfort. We have 4 basic human emotions, Jason. You want to take a quick guess as to what they are?
I'll let you tell the audience.
All right. Well, just to make it easy, happy, sad, mad, and scared. And research has found that with all the complicated emotions we have, you can biologically break them down into those 4: happy, sad, mad, and scared. Well, how many of those are positive? 1. So wait a minute. Let's think about this. We're trying to tell our athletes and the people who are listening, we're trying to tell you that you need to live in 25% of your emotions, that everything else is pathological. I know about you, but I get it. Like when I'm sad, people tell me to cheer up. When I'm mad, they tell me to calm down. When I'm scared, they reassure me, say everything's going to be okay. There's no room in our culture for us to actually live, let alone perform in these other 3 emotions. but there's nothing wrong with them. We only have four. All four of them are human. All four of them are appropriate. And athletes, you have every right to be mad at the refs when there's a bad call, scared when you're being looked on to perform. And I'm not against positive thinking and confidence. When we can do that, that's great. It works well. But I don't expect you to do that all the time. So the big intervention that I do is creating this space and normalizing this anxiety. And then saying, here's the magic question for you. If this anxiety is helping you, then just go with it. Stay anxious. Like if I'm nervous that I'm not going to do well in my test tomorrow, that motivates me to study today. Then that's a great use of it. If I'm worried about not performing well in the tournament and it's having me be more intensive about my sleep at night and my practice, then there's nothing wrong with it. But if it's holding me back, if it's hurting me, if it's a distraction and it's unhelpful, well, then what I want to do is to say, well, if I'm anxious about something, what do I want to get accomplished? Let me use this as a red flag, as a warning sign. But rather it being a problem, just let it redirect me back to what I need to do in order to get the result that I want. So rather than worrying about whether you have anxiety or not and how to calm yourself down, because that's a distraction, just use it as a warning flag. If you have it, is it helping me or hurting me? If it's helping you, then keep it. If it's hurting you, say, then what do I need to do? It's a quick formula. Again, work with athletes to really develop this, but that's the outline.
You know, when I see clients and I use hypnosis or I'm using a different technique to help them understand themselves, I always talk about emotions. And you said it a minute ago, the 4 types of emotions we have, but I encourage my clients to experience your emotions. Do not block them away. Experience them so that you can understand who you are. But I also like to guide people towards being more mindful, understanding things around you, giving more gratitude. I also help guys with just a simple meditation, something that can help you gain more clarity and more focus so that you can experience everything. Then you can start to understand your triggers and be able to articulate that to a Dr. Eddie so that he can find strategies to help you grow and to enhance yourself. And I'm just happy how your candidness about facing and overcoming mental blocks, that you're sharing this, because it does shed a light on a seldom discussed aspect of athletic performance. Just talking about this opens up doors for athletes to explore their vulnerabilities, but they need to look at those, in my opinion, as strengths, Dr. Eddie, because we have to fail, I think, as athletes. And I know I have 2 Division I athletes that are sons, and they're playing football right now. And there is failure associated with your performance. I guess this question lines up perfectly. How do you address the fear and failure with athletes, especially when it becomes a significant barrier to their overall performance and their overall well-being?
Yeah, beautiful question. And let's just build on from where the conversation we just had here a few moments ago.
Yes.
If you're really afraid of the mistakes, there's nothing wrong with you. Your response to it is where we want to work, but I'm not telling you to just be happy about making mistakes. I'm not going to tell you that they're okay. I can't stand it when coaches and everybody else says that. I'm like, they're not okay. If they weren't, we wouldn't be yelled at. We wouldn't get bad grades. We wouldn't get fired. We wouldn't go to jail. Like there's mistakes have consequences. But to your point with the mindfulness, a big part of mindfulness, paying attention on purpose in the present moment without judgment, is a lot of willingness, a lot of expansion, a lot of acceptance of what is. Because I don't know about you, but I've fought reality and I never win. Reality always wins. Yes. And so when we have to look at this reality that we don't like, that's the idea of opening up to the emotions that are associated with it, because they're healthy, they're appropriate. There are times to be scared. There are times to be mad. There are times to be afraid and sad. The question as a performer is that given this context, the pressure of sport, the fear of failure, the perfectionistic drive, the pressure to perform, how do I perform with all of those feelings and thoughts and emotions? Because if you're going to struggle to combat them and get rid of them, then you can't pay attention to the football game or the track meet that you're running or the business meeting that you're having. It's always going to be a distraction if you're struggling to fight with what is. So step one to this acceptance of the mistakes is recognizing, much as you suggested, hey, we're not going to glorify it. We're not going to say it's okay. And it is absolutely a requirement for learning. That's not to make you feel better, but we have to accept the idea that if we're going to do something we've never done before, in order to learn how to do it, we have to make mistakes along the way, because the mistakes inform what's not working so that we can eventually get to what is. And that, again, is, please, I keep saying this, but do not use this to make you feel better, because that's not the point. I don't really care about how you feel. We care about how you perform. And so you'll feel better after you win. But accepting that 75% of what it means, your relationship with your mistakes is probably one of the biggest predictors of who's going to succeed and who's going to burn out and fail. Because if you're unwilling to make mistakes, you're basically telling me you're unwilling to learn. Because I've never met anybody learn anything without mistakes being a part of it. So we have to accept and be willing to feel those mistakes, but always referring to it in service of growth. If we just stop at the mistake and then reinterpret it as I suck, I'm terrible, I'm no good, this person won't love me, I'm a failure, that's a whole big distraction that we don't want to go running down. No, I made a mistake, and I'm going to take this moment and say, why did that happen? Did I not focus? Am I unprepared? Did I not sleep well? Did I not study the playbook? What could I do today that would make it turn out better the next time? And then you've grown. And if you do that with every mistake you've made, then you get to the top of your game. That's the path. It's through the mistakes.
And Dr. Adi, growth is everything. And your approach to reframing failure as a stepping stone rather than a stumbling block is on point. It's awesome. And it's a testament to the human spirit of resilience that we have, echoing my beliefs about the intrinsic value of perseverance and the courage in facing adversity. Well, let's talk about the practical steps, like for developing mental toughness. Could you outline some practical steps athletes can take to develop mental toughness and resilience, like particularly in high pressure situations?
Sure. Again, I love the way you're asking these questions, because now we're stacking. So we've hit two of the biggest in the two little rants that I just had. So let me go on my third favorite rant.
Okay.
Sleep. We are a sleep deprived society, and sleep is your number one performance enhancer. Period. Now, I know a lot of you out there is like, oh, I only get 6, but that's enough for me. I do fine. Okay. A couple problems with that. What the research has shown is that when you're sleep deprived, you don't know that you're sleep deprived. Sort of like people who are drunk. They keep saying, give me the keys, I can drive, I'm fine. They don't realize that they're drunk. Well, it's the same thing when we're sleep deprived. And I'll suggest that you probably are doing fine. But what kind of attitude for excellence is that? Oh, look, I have just enough hydration. I'm not dehydrated. I have just enough food that I'm not passing out. That sounds really great for your training, doesn't it? So why would it be so minimalistic about how much sleep do I need? Why would we want to get when sleep offers every organ in your body and every process in your body an opportunity to grow and get stronger and be resilient? Why wouldn't you want to maximize this free resource? Sleep is your number one performance enhancer. So I have a workshop on my website and everything else that just really gets into all of this. We could do a whole nother podcast on it. But in short, if I have an athlete that comes to me and they're getting less than 6 hours sleep, I don't do any mental training with them at all. I'm like, anything I teach you is not going to work. Your brain is not rested and it's not able to do the things that it needs to do. I had one football player a little while ago that was there, got him up to 8 hours in 2 weeks. First of all, he just started to love it. And he was like, I feel so much better. But his mistakes went down. His anxiety went down by 50%. Like half of the problems that he came to see me with just disappeared on their own when all I helped him do was get a little bit more sleep at night. Now, I know it's difficult. And I know particularly my high school and college athletes, you got, early weight room and late travel. And I just encourage you not to give up on it and say, well, it's too hard, I can't do it. Because every night matters. Every time that you can get that extra sleep matters. So when you talk about mental toughness, I always start off with sleep and being sure that you can maximize that, because it lays the foundation for all the other skills that we've talked about. The things like accepting the reality of the emotions, having an accepting and mindful approach to those, as well as learning from mistakes. Those would be the big three.
Well, and then, you're fighting against the PlayStation, and you're fighting against social media that keeps these guys up at night. But I think the strategies that you're talking about, that you mentioned, they are a lifeline for coaches. For athletes, coaches as well, because they don't get a lot of sleep also.
Well, yeah.
But it's a lifeline. when they have to navigate, the stormy cliffs, of competing, so those kind of practical guidelines resonates with my philosophy because, say for instance, I get a young lady coming in who wants to lose weight, who needs a level of hypnosis. I can't do anything if you're not going to be focused in the session because you're thinking
Right.
about so many different things or you're tired. Moving you to the theta brainwave state doesn't do you any good when you have a ton of things on your mind or you can't relax. And the same thing with athletes. Mental toughness is the anchor that keeps these guys floating. No matter what kind of adversity comes in there, if they have that, then they are well on their way. But
Yeah. If I could jump in, you bring up a really good point that I don't want to skip over because you mentioned it right at the beginning about the social media and all the things that fight against us. And again, a lot of my athletes will throw their hands up and be like, well, look, I can't do it. The coach makes my schedule and, everybody's on the phone. This is when my friends are. And I want to encourage people like you had said, Jason, like, let's take a moment here and slow down. Because we keep going so fast and thinking through, and here are the barriers. We're missing a lot of the details. And I want to empathize. Look, I'm telling you, my phone here, I've got a timer on it that shuts off my social media at a certain time because I couldn't control myself enough to stay off. I need the thing to go screen timer. You've used, this too much. Get off, go to bed. I have a phone on my reminder to do it. And look, I've been doing this for 30 years. I should know better, right? But I'm also human. So I don't want to just lecture at the people out there and be like, hey, social media is evil and you got to stay off your phones and this is what's killing us and you're an athlete and you know what to do. You're also a human being. And we do have these temptations that are constantly coming in. But let me ask you and remind you of a couple of things. Mm-hmm. If you're an athlete, you're trying to do things that other people don't do. And even among athletes, if you want to be a champion, you're trying to be better than and literally competing against other people. And this is not just on the field or on the course. This is in the way that you're living. And everything you do matters. Everything you don't do matters. And so I want to challenge you to say that you have a choice. It is hard. Life is hard. For athletes, what you're doing is hard. And then to be a champion, it's harder than you can actually expect, but need to respect. And so if you want to have fun, if you want to be like everybody else, if you want to enjoy your senior year, if you want to get the most out of your college experience, then you're moving away from your championship goals. And that's fine. But don't expect to be a champion. Like you have to align it. There's only one way to win with this discipline. And so at night, when you just want to watch Netflix and chill out because that's what you feel like and you're letting your emotions take control, then you have a choice to make. And much like you said, through these mindfulness practices, can I settle back and kind of say, well, who is it that I want to be? Is this going to move me towards or away from my championship goals? And if it's away, am I okay with that? Am I giving up the idea of being a champion? I just want to be an average athlete or, have fun in the experience. And if so, then great, live your best life. But don't be so upset if you're losing or making those mistakes and you're on the field and you're upset the next day that you're not playing the way that you want to play because you didn't contribute to that. You didn't do something that's going to put you in the best position to succeed. So again, no judgment and respect for the difficulty that you have in life. That's what's keeping you up. But if you care enough about it, there is something that you could do. And you have to own that in order to be that champion. So please realize that you have a choice.
And thus, mindfulness plays a big part because makes you more aware if you're practicing it right. And I know that you're teaching these guys the techniques to be able to be aware of everything you do impacts your performance. And you've said the impact of average isn't good enough.
Yeah.
You've evolved from the mantra because the average isn't good enough to focusing on life-giving goals. How can you tell me how has that shifted the impact on the way you coach athletes today?
Yeah, I'm glad you picked up that story on my website. It's kind of an embarrassing one, but it kind of gets back to my midlife crisis of it. So I had this business card that I was just so pumped about because I can't, trying to come up with a theme. And the theme of my practice now, my motto is overcoming obstacles to excellence, because I think that excellence is more than just the positive stuff. It's a matter of saying, hey, what's in front of me and how do I overcome it? But before that, it was because average isn't good enough. And it was this real macho, like, okay, like I'm the performance excellence guy. You got to grind, you got to push, and like you can't settle for less. And the marketing person at the hospital I had worked with at the time, when she read it, she looked at me and she was like, oh, like she just found it so distasteful. And I was like, well, clearly she's not being excellent. She was excellent actually, but I didn't really quite get it until, again, a few years later, when I realized that wasn't coming from a healthy place. Average isn't good enough. I wasn't realizing that, first of all, I was average in a lot of areas, because you can't be great at everything, period. You simply can't. So you might think that you're awesome, and you probably are in one, maybe two particular areas, but then you're going to be average in a whole bunch of others and below average in a fair amount. And so that message that I was actually putting forth on my card about average isn't good enough, I'm afraid I might have actually been hurting people with it. I was hurting myself with it, because I was never satisfied, because average wasn't good enough. So I had to win everything every day. And then when I didn't,
Right.
there was shame. So I tore up that card, thank goodness, and I learned. And I was like, this isn't where it is, because average can actually be fantastic. If you want a harmonious life where you're doing, maybe you don't have the best marriage, but it's good, and you're not the best father, but you're spending a lot of quality time with your kids, and your job is going well, it could be better, you could be making more, having more clients, but it's doing the job, and you're in good physical health, but you're not winning championships. I don't know, that sounds like a great life. Very average, but balanced or harmonious. And I'll tell you, that's difficult to do. So be very, very careful about that, because if you want to win in one particular area, it's going to come from others. We all have 24 hours in a day. Nobody's got more or less time than anybody else. It's what you do with it.
Well, it's definitely, being average is nothing to be ashamed of, because sometimes, like you said, in some senses, average is just, it's okay. Well, it depends on exactly what the goal is and what you're trying to set. I mean, it's a narrative that, I wholeheartedly embrace, and it really underscores our discussion here, today on the mental game plan. So, but let's talk about integrating, how you integrate clinical and sports psychology for peak performance. As someone who, works at the intersection of the clinical and sports psychology arena, how do you integrate these disciplines to help these athletes achieve peak performance?
Yeah, back in the day when I first got into school, like they used to think of psychology as, again, that pathology, and sports psychology was kind of like everything's fine, and it's mental toughness. And there was this real dividing line between the two. In fact, many teams have two different teams: mental training teams and then clinical psychology teams. And fortunately, that's moved and that's changed. Even the Olympics has redone the way that they do it, so that they've integrated it. But it's a way that I've always done my practice, because I don't know, as soon as I got out of graduate school, I was like, what's the difference? Like, this is my experience. These are my thoughts and my feelings. And they run the gamut of pathological ones to performance enhancing ones. How am I supposed to separate out? Where's the line between a normal anxiety and a diagnosable pathological anxiety? And even more so, I found that the skills that when I was in graduate school that I was learning from sports psychology, I was bringing into my chronic pain and obesity populations, and they were loving it and getting better. And then there were things from chronic pain and what they had to do to deal with their pain that I took and I applied to my marathon runners and my distance swimmers. And it just, honestly, my whole career, I never separated them out. That's why, thank goodness, I went to get trained in the full range. Like you do need the training in the clinical work in order to do it. And you also need training in the excellence work in order to do it. So I got training on both ends so that I could see and work with people on the spectrum. So for me personally, I haven't really separated it out. I like to think of it as we're always swimming in our thoughts and feelings, and we need to develop skills to interact with them so that we can be our best. And if the best is having a client with chronic pain and obesity be able to walk around the block, or it's helping somebody go to the Olympics and win a gold medal in the 400 meters, there's more overlap than you would expect.
And I think that kind of work is groundbreaking when you integrate those two. I'd like to sprinkle in some modalities, some spiritual modalities in there as well as a third piece to help athletes, find themselves as well. I just think that there's a lot of ways that we can reach, we can help build performance with business people and athletes and so forth. And what you're talking about also offers a holistic view of the athlete sort of marrying the mind and the body, all in the pursuit of excellence. And it's a synergy. And it's something that, I deeply advocate for people that I work with. But when you're addressing performance anxiety, Dr. Eddie, it's truly a common issue for many athletes.
Mhm.
What unique approach do you take to help athletes manage and overcome this type of anxiety?
Yeah. Okay. So I'll give you one of my favorite interventions if that's what you're asking for. So if I'm working with you, listener, again, get out your pen and paper. This is gonna be fun stuff. But I remember it's based on where I said I want to create safety in your anxiety, and I want you to understand exactly what it is to remove the threat. So I like to use what I call a fire alarm metaphor. So you've probably been in hundreds of fire alarms between all the drills that we have, or somebody's burning bacon downstairs, and or the battery's dead and the alarm's going off. And almost for me, never, and hopefully for most of you, when you hear a fire alarm, there's not a fire. But when there's a fire, I see it on the news, or if it's going on, I hear fire alarms going off. So we know that there's some association. But in my personal experience, hundreds of fire alarms, no danger. So Jason, let's say that right now in the middle of this podcast, my fire alarm in my house goes off, or in your office it goes off, and I just say, look, listen, it's probably nothing. Don't worry about it. Everything will be fine. You're laughing, right? I was like, how does that make you feel right now?
Uneasy.
Yes, exactly. More anxious than you were. Why? Well, because it's telling me that something might be wrong, and I'm here trying to be positive about it or ignoring it. Just like when our fire alarm of anxiety goes off about, our relationships, how our kids are doing, what's going on with the business plan, the game I got to play tomorrow. You care about what you're doing. That's why you're anxious, because if you don't get it, it could hurt you. So that's number one. Number two is when the fire alarm goes off, if you try to be positive about it and ignore it, your anxiety will actually go up. Because it's a survival instinct. Your anxiety is a natural human experience that says there's danger out there. And if you're going to say, no, it isn't. Like if I'm in front of a bear and you're like, oh, don't worry, it's friendly. Again, you're freaking me out. You mean to tell me this thing growling at me and drooling is not dangerous? I can't believe you. But that's what all the positive thinking that we try to do does. So let's get back to the fire alarm. What do? Well, if we try to ignore it, we're going to have a really bad podcast because we're both going to be distracted. We're not going to listen to each other. We're not going to have good conversation. We need to lean into it. Maybe I shout down and be like, is everything okay? And maybe my son downstairs can be like, yeah, it's nothing. Or we check our email. I used to do this when I worked at the hospital. I'd be like, hey, the fire alarm. And they're like, don't worry about it. It's just a drill. You can finish the session. So then what do? Because we still don't like the noise, but we lean in and we have to talk a little bit louder. Now, I wish that the noise would go away, but what we can do is still perform and have a great podcast by just dialing into what's important, because I feel safe in the anxiety. I feel safe in the fire alarm going off. If I'm going to fight with the fire alarm and try to take out the batteries or turn it off, our performance stops. But if I lean in to every anxious thought and feeling, not run away from it, lean into it and say, what's it trying to tell me? You can do one of two things. If there's a fire, then address it. If I need to get out of this house, if we need to end the podcast, then we do it. If we need to take the bacon off the stove, we do it. If we need to change the battery, we can do it. If we have done everything that we need to do, or my son's going to take care of it, and my performance is what's most important now, because you can't always take care of the anxiety, then I let it go off in the background. Is where the mindfulness can help. It's not,
Yes.
I don't have to get rid of it. I drop the struggle to control it. And I just dial in and go double down on what's important now. WIN. If I want to win, I got to focus on what's important now. And you can only do that if you lean into your anxiety and see what it's safe. And it either means that, hey, yeah, I'm nervous the night before, and how do I stop all these thoughts? Well, again, you don't. You recognize that you're anxious the night before because you care. And what can I do about it? Well, I can't train anymore. I can't review any more film. But what I can do is get a good night's sleep, and that'll prepare me. But that doesn't make my anxiety go away. No, it doesn't. I'm going to tell you for the whole hour that we're here, I'm not getting rid of your anxiety. I'm telling you how to interact with it differently. You can feel safe in your anxiety. You'll feel unpleasant in your anxiety. Again, but it'll help. No, it's okay. It's just a dramatic pause. But but when you can feel safe and use the anxiety to direct you towards what you need to do next, that's where high performance comes from. It's not feeling better, it's doing better.
And I'm smiling because even though I work with a number of spiritual modalities and I've transferred those over to your everyday average people, you're saying some of the same things. When you have things that are bothering you, or you have stress, or you have, a number of anxiety triggers, recognize them, but react to them differently. And I teach my clients the same thing. You can't get rid of them, but you can say, oh, okay, there's a bill that's due. I have a fire at the house. Let me call the fire department. You categorize these moments or these issues, with a level of mindfulness and with a level of peace and calmness, not trying to get rid of them, but knowing how to deal with them. And I like how you said that, addressing the specter of performance anxiety. And you said it with such deep nuance and depth, Dr. Eddie. I mean, it really showcases your mastery over the mental game and understanding how these guys need to play it. It's a true testament to the idea that understanding our fears can really free us. But I want to shift a little bit. I want to talk about the importance of character in sports. And that's one of the things you emphasize, it's not just about the outcome, but the character that defines an athlete. How do you work with athletes to build character alongside their physical and their mental skills?
Yeah, absolutely. I guess I would start off first by letting you know, like, I don't lecture about it. Like, it's really a question where I kind of say, well, who's the person that you want to be?
Okay.
And that's where I just did in my blog, I just went on lying and cheating. And it's interesting because I found myself empathizing more with the quote unquote liars and cheaters than I thought I would as it aired right through this, because what ends up happening is that we care so much about winning, and then there's so much pressure to do it, and we don't want to disappoint other people, which are all great values, the things that we want to make people proud of us, and we want to make people happy. And sometimes it's even for selfish but healthy, good reasons, that I just want to win. I feel good about myself and I can achieve things. The character is what grounds us, though, and how do we go about it? Because, I mean, some coaches have even said, you've heard the quote, like, if you're not cheating, you're not trying.
Right.
And where is that line? Especially like when it's like, well, I can hold on this football player, and if I do and it prevents the touchdown, everybody will celebrate that cheating play because I'll just take the penalty and it's worth it. Well, then what's the next step? Can I do steroids? And if I don't get caught, it's okay. But then if I get caught, then I'll just pay the penalty. Like, I'd like to think that we would just say that, well, no, that one's not okay. Well, then why is the first one? So it gets really complicated. But what I love with my athletes goes back to what you had said with the identity. In my first sessions, what I earlier kind of say is, like, tell me about the athlete that you want to be. You could just say character, you could say values, but what is important to you? And very often, almost everybody will say something like hard work.
Yes.
Okay. So once we get through this list and we identify, maybe it's honesty or sportsmanship or being a leader, and then I use that character that they've said that they want to be. And I say, well, what would that type of person, what would that hardworking person do in this adversity or this situation? What would that honest person say in this difficulty despite the consequences? And can you continue to be that person no matter how hard it is? Because you told me that's who you want to be. And then that serves as a tremendous motivational factor, that rather than I have to, or I should, or I need to, because you said you value hard work. Here's the thing, hard work is only able to do when it's hard. Like, if you're doing it and it's easy, you're not doing hard work. So you're actually inviting in. It's the same thing with courage, right? If you're not scared, you can't be courageous or brave. So if you value these things, please understand that you're inviting in a whole bunch of adversity, and you're choosing, that word again, a response, not based on how you feel, but based on your character, on your value, on who you want to be. So you will say those honest things. And if you drop the ball, but everybody calls that it was a catch, you admit that it wasn't. I had to do that 2 Sundays ago. I was tempted. It was really low. It was really close to the ground, but it touched the ground when I picked it up. Everybody said it was a catch. One guy asked me, he goes, was it? 4th down, put down my head and said no.
Wow.
I was sad.
The one thing I think about when I think about high character sports is golf. And,
Yeah.
it's just, this is one of those sports that You just have to be on top of it. But your focus on character building, it strikes at the heart of really what sports are truly about. I mean, not just winning, but the values that we cultivate along the way. It's a psychological a philosophy that I believe is truly foundational to the greatness of an athlete, both on and off the field. So,
And it'll be in service of
mhm,
winning too, though, Jason. I don't want to say that a lot of times my athletes will think it's either or. Well,
mhm,
gosh, okay, you admitted that, but now you hurt your team because you could have won that game. And I'm like, you know what? But my honesty as a foundation, then it spreads out because now I'm honest with my teammates about when they're working or when they're not, when they need feedback about how they're doing. And I'm honest with myself about, am I working hard enough? Am I doing everything right? Am I being my best self? Hard work something that you just do to grind to win, but it is certainly something that if you live it in all areas of your life, you're going to get to a higher level. So these characteristics, they're good and they're virtuous for a reason because they do produce fruits and they're
yeah,
not in conflict with winning.
yes,
They're synonymous with winning when you
yeah,
use it in all areas of your life.
absolutely fantastic. So, advice for young athletes. Okay, so given your vast experience and in your personal journey, what advice would you give young athletes just starting to navigate the complexities of their athletic and personal identities?
Yeah, if you want to go back to young athletes, I really right away I was like rewind and listen to what we talked about mistakes for growth because the hardest thing I can't believe younger and younger the expectations and their desire to be perfect and to do it right. And then even for I think high schoolers in particular, they're so tired of everybody pouring into their lives. They've got six teachers, a sports psychologist, doctors, parents, coaches constantly telling them what they could do and where they could be better. And it gets exhausting. So for the people around the young athletes, what I would like to say is reinforce what they're doing well. Give them more acknowledgments so that you
Mhm.
can kind of build their character so that they can keep doing it, not just be like, well, that's what you're supposed to do and then walk away from it. We need to reinforce when our young athletes are doing things well, everything from skills on the field to the character off of it. And then the athletes themselves there too. I'll be like, when you're getting all of this coaching, please understand that the coaches are there to coach you. So yes, I hope that they're saying positive things, but also know that it is their job. They're actually getting paid to tell you where to get better. So if you can adopt this idea of growth as a young athlete, that as good as you are, you can be a lot better. And I hope that that's the case. If there's some 12-year-old that's reached his peak, I'm going to be really upset and disappointed about how the rest of your life is going to go. And it doesn't feel that way. And I'm sorry that the world is like that. And I'm sorry our environment puts all this pressure for you to constantly be better. But if you can really adapt and take it all the way through, look at all the Hall of Famers. They all had this attitude that they could be even better. And they enjoyed the process. Well, I take that back. They didn't always enjoy the process, but they
Right.
engaged the process because they
Exactly.
knew that was what was most important. And you can have that sense of fulfillment every day. Are you better today than you were yesterday? This kind of gets to cliche, but it's become a cliche because it's so powerful. Can you really look at yourself today and say, did I do something better, longer, stronger, faster, more kindly? Like, where am I better today as a result? And then can I beat that again tomorrow on this path of growth? That's that's the best thing that these young athletes can start to adapt. And the earlier you adapt it, the better your career is going to go and the farther you'll get.
So, Dr. Eddie, let the audience who's out there listening, tell them what you have going on now. What's new? How can they locate you?
Oh yeah.
Some of the things that you're doing to support all athletes.
Yeah. So everything is located at dreddieoconnor.com. So everything I'm about to mention, you'll find a link to it there. But that's my website, and I've got some free resources on there. My blog kind of hits a lot of these topics. The thing I really want to direct you to is another free resource that it's called "What to Do When Positive Thinking Doesn't Work." It's a brief 20-minute training video, but it really gets into a lot of what I've talked about here. I think one of the best mental skills is about how to unhook from the negative thinking. And again, how to get away from that struggle to control your thoughts and feelings. So it's a very, very practical training tool that honestly, I think if you just watch it once, you'll get something out of it and shift. So it's a free resource. I encourage you to get it at dreddieoconnor.com. I also have on there a sleep workshop. It's a 90-minute quick one that would be great. If you're sleeping less than 6 hours, I encourage you to go get it there. I've got my course, as was mentioned, the Psychology Performance, How to Be Your Best in Life. And I also have another free resource, a link to my YouTube channel. It's Mental Toughness in 60 Seconds. So if you've got a short attention span, I got a lot of 60-second videos. Sometimes I go on for 120, but it's worth it. But they're all categorized in playlists according to anxiety or sport parenting or different topics. So dreddieoconnor.com. Really, again, encourage you to get that. What to do if positive thinking doesn't work. And if you want to work with me, I've got a click there where we can work together on one-on-one. I have a telehealth practice. And I'm really excited about my most recent project, which is my Success Stories community, which is an online platform where I've got a lot of the one-on-one trainings available to you in video so that you can kind of work yourself through it. Everything we've talked about is in there, between the sleep and the values identification and the mindfulness training is all there. But it's also a coaching membership too, where you can meet with me once a month. And so you can kind of take all that progress on your own, but still have that personal one-on-one connection with me over the long haul. And we can still journey along this path to excellence together, overcoming all the obstacles that are in your way. So I've created a whole bunch of that stuff because I want to be there for you. If you don't know, if you feel confused, send me an email. I'll talk you through it.
Awesome. Any last parting words to these athletes and coaches out here that a message that you may want to get across to them?
Yeah, just congratulations for tuning in here. I mean, the fact that you're listening to the mental game plan means that you've already got a bit of a growth mindset. You've got enough humility that says, hey, I could be better. You've got a desire. And whether it be podcasts or even my content, I encourage you to listen to less and do more. What I mean is, like, when people come in, I'm like, okay, there's all the stuff that I could teach you, but please don't do everything that you just heard for the last 50 minutes. It's overwhelming. Pick one thing from this podcast and practice it every day so that it starts to make an impact in your life. It's the doing that matters. And sometimes we can kind of get into a lot of learning, and I won't take any action until I master it in my head, but that's not really where it takes place. I've given you enough today that if you just pick one, work on your sleep, begin a mindfulness practice, just do one and start to be consistent with that. Start to see the impact on your life before you pick up something else. Again, that's part of the growth process. Don't get overwhelmed with knowledge, because knowledge without action is worthless.
Awesome. Dr. Eddie, don't go anywhere. We're going to kind of wrap it up right now. Stay there. I'm going to finish this out. You're going to want to hear some of the nice things I said about you, so don't go anywhere.
All right.
But thank you for being on the show. And give me 1 second. I'll be right back to you. Wow. Awesome. Dr. Eddie O'Connor, pros, youth, high school, collegiate, international, whatever barrier that needs to be broken, Dr. Eddie can help. And there are a lot of different ways to overcome things in your life. And a lot of athletes, and we try to be tough, and we try to, just push through. But it's okay. It's okay to sit down and talk to someone to help them unlock your true potential. And that's what this show is all about. It's unlocking the true potential so that you can reach your peak performance. And it doesn't matter if you are a female or if you're a male athlete, it doesn't matter. You are trying to achieve at the highest level. And there are professionals out there like Dr. Eddie, and there are others too. But these people are able to help you unlock this. But you have to be centered. You have to be focused. And you have to have self-realize that I need this. No one can help you by your parents pushing you towards this. I heard this guy. I read about this guy. No, you have to already want this. You have to set your intentions. And once you do that, then the work will help you. The one-on-ones, the consultations, it will work. But I want to thank you for joining us on the Mental Game Plan. And if you aspire to be the best, continue to tune in. We'll have all types of athletes. We'll have all types of experts coming on the show to share their experiences. And I'm so grateful that Dr. Eddie decided to take me up on my offer, because I researched him now. I made sure that I was able to provide the type of questions that he can, he could pour into the audience and to the listeners. And I want to leave you with 3 words: trust, relax, and discover. Thank you so much. Good night.